from Simon Bridges earlier this morning about why National insists the age of superannuation entitlement needs to be raised. Well, yesterday we had the Prime Minister telling us, oh, no, it doesn't, and it won't on her watch either. So where do this morning's panel of Elliot Ikilei from the New Conservative Party and social media expert Jess Maloney land on the issue? Let's find out. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us this morning. Superannuation, Elliot, what do you reckon?
We would like to keep it as is, and we would like to look at options as to why we have to move up. So there are a lot of things that we're spending money on that we don't think we should spend money on. If we can keep it down, that's fine. We may have to bite the bullet, though, in terms of how the fluctuation of our economy is moving. We may have to look at it. I don't want to, but we may have to. And I think the positive, though, is that we do have a lifespan which is increasing. We are looking at certain angles of how to make those hard-working areas more. I know that even for Pacifica, for example, the rates of life expectancy are growing as well. They're in the high 70s. Unacceptable, it needs to be more, but at least it is growing, and at least it does cover the 65. I think perhaps one thing we do need to look at perhaps are ones where, for example, Down syndrome citizens, actually, maybe there's an exception to be made there.
And there's been an exception made about entitlement to KiwiSaver, right?
Yes.
So people who have disabilities or illnesses that are shortening their life are now increasingly getting dispensations around. So you're making a compelling case, I think, for the fact that if you're not going to live till 65, then we need to start discussing how we can...
But it is our biggest benefit out of any
the biggest and most
entitlement we give. The superannuation is huge, and National does point out that in the 70s you would expect to have about 1/5 of your life being funded on a pension. Now it's a quarter of your life because we're living so much longer. Do you accept that there needs to be some way of shifting that? If we're going to live longer, we don't need to be pulling on it for as long. We're all a lot healthier.
Yeah, well, I would even say after this I'm going off to the geriatric ward to visit my nan. She's 94 and that's beautiful. So I think we need to be aware that we are living longer. We just are, and she had a very manual job in very manual areas. Technology is going well.
Go your nan. Go your nan.
94.
Jess, can I this is a very personal question.
Yeah.
How old are you? You don't have to...
I'm 31.
I'm 31.
I'm not even ashamed about it.
Yeah.
Such a lie they tell us about getting older. I love it.
Yeah, okay. So you all things being equal, you're going to live to be a very, very old lady.
I already know I'm going to be extremely old.
Good.
I've got very my
old people in your family.
Great-grandparents on either side, both over 100. So I plan to be. I reckon I'm going to be 120.
So okay, well let's to make the maths simple for me. If you live to be 97 and Simon Bridges has his way and superannuation comes in at 67, you're going to get 30 years of super.
Yeah.
Can we afford that? And do we need to have those discussions? But more importantly, in a way, can we afford not to do that?
Yeah.
And look after our elderly people?
Well, look, I think there's a few... This is a really big conversation, right? And I think we're making it a lot about sort of superannuation and whether or not we should raise it or not. And it's not actually a simple question like that. It's got a lot of... there's a lot of conversations that need to be had. First of all, it's how we live when we're older, because I think that is a big part of it. It's like, how do we look after our old people? How do we create amazing communities for them? How do we actually make sure they're still engaged with a younger audience? You know, there's amazing places overseas who are doing things with schools within kind of retirement villages to really kind of up the quality of life. So I think it's a quality of life conversation. I think that my sort of sense is that we will work for a lot longer. So it makes sense for me to be thinking about the retirement age going up. I think the tricky thing here is that with the current government, right, they've made a political promise that that's not going to happen. So they've got to almost stick to that in order to kind of keep those voters on side.
They do, and the Prime Minister's made it a non-negotiable, 65 under her watch.
But also, you know, I think it's a government that would be very understanding of the fact that I think it's every decade now we're adding around 2.5 years to our life expectancy because of the quality of life and the access to medicine that we have here within New Zealand. And so they will be aware of those facts and figures as well. And I think it would be silly to think that they weren't considering doing this at some point. I just think it's a political statement for this next election run where they're going, we're not going to do this because we said we weren't going to do this. But
they just need to get some facts and figures behind them.
Exactly. And I think we also need to be thinking about how we save and kind of for our retirement as well. Like in my head, I don't even think about getting a super, to be honest. I don't factor that into my retirement planning.
Because you're doing KiwiSaver.
Because I'm doing KiwiSaver and because I'm trying to make something.
And once again, this reinforces existing advantage and disadvantage, doesn't it? So if you are earning enough to save, then
you have a healthy KiwiSaver.
Absolutely.
And an asset you can sell, like a house that you can downsize.
But if you were working on a minimum wage in one of our cities and trying to pay the rent and trying to keep the warrant of fitness, maintain, keep the car on the road and all that kind of stuff, you won't save much at all, are you?
Exactly.
So it's about protecting the people who aren't able to look after their own old age. But do we have to start looking at some stage at saying, actually, you're approaching your old age in a really outstandingly healthy position? Do we need to have universal pensions? Do we need to give pensions to the really wealthy?
I actually think we do, and I'm a little bit offside even with some of my friends on this one. I think we do because I think in New Zealand, we have an objectively high status. We put life at a very high status, and we objectively say that you are important, you're valid, therefore you get the superannuation, whatever your situation, whether you've got $1 million or you've got $10,000. You are objectively, you are important, you're a valid member of the community, you're one of our sages, so therefore you get this. And I think it's good to have it at a universal level.
Respectful thing, and I think what needs to be shone a light on a little bit more is some choice. So there's a great organisation out there who encourage people who are in that top earning bracket and who are retiring extremely comfortably where they don't need the super to actually donate that. And I think that it's those types of schemes that we will see become more prevalent. And I think that this is also one of those things where we need to start having a conversation about stuff like a living wage to raise the quality of people's life throughout their life so that they're able to...
So you're not reliant on that pension.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good pitch having to donate it, right? Because you're just a bit greedy if you're taking it and everyone around you sort of saying, oh, you're not donating yours because you look like you're doing all right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I know that we earn that right. I think having the ability to kind of respect people and go, well, you've earned this right, but then for someone to have the option to turn around and give it to a worthy cause or a worthy person is good.
So in summary, whilst you believe in universal superannuation, full stop, but you are not vehemently opposed to the idea of it potentially raising to an... Okay, thanks.
Unless you find a miracle.
Funding
it. Something else.
I know.
Pot 'em up.
Right.
Thanks for joining us,
Jess and
guys.
Elliot, thank you so much for coming in this morning.